Thank you for tuning in to this series of entrepreneur case studies brought to you by iBoss Inc.'s Capital Academy and Lifecycle VC. Each segment will focus on an entrepreneur's business life cycle story. The thought leaders behind Capital Academy and Lifecycle VC knew how valuable sharing these case studies with budding through seasoned entrepreneurs would be to confirm why we take this entrepreneurial ride so seriously. Each of us, having started and exited numerous businesses, have combined our focus to assist in roles to include fellow entrepreneur or sounding board, direct or lead investor for capital campaigns, and partner for strategy and growth paths. My name is Lorette Farris, and I am a veteran of the financial services industry with experience from Wall Street through crowdfunding. I am probably more excited about speaking with the entrepreneurs sharing their stories on Capital Academy than they are. So now that you know who we are, let's get to it. Our inaugural guest is Garnes, a recovering attorney and serial entrepreneur. Glenn now adds his voice. He adds his negotiating and problem-solving skills inherent in navigating legal matters to serve entrepreneurs in connecting with and serving their markets. So let's get to his story. Glenn, welcome back again. I am so happy to get to this next segment. I think I'm a little excited about where we're going on this one.
Well, I'm gonna challenge you on something you just said. I don't know that you're more excited than I am to be talking about this story, but maybe for somebody else.
All right, so we're equally excited
There you go.
in getting this passed. And so in this particular segment, what I'd like to now start talking about is it's one thing when companies are starting a business. As a startup, you go through various things and putting together documents and processes and all the rest of that. Well, as a company that is not operational and you're putting together all of those pieces, and I know many of them who also put in 16, 18 hours a day, and that is, again, putting together the initial stuff. As an operating business who is going through similar pieces, because when you're doing business planning and building out a business plan, there's research, there's development, there's testing things, there's thinking you have an answer and figuring it out and finding out, oh, I like your word earlier, I have to pivot. Talk to us about what it's like going through the business planning process as you're operating your business.
Well, I'm going to start with the end in mind here.
I like
as you
that.
talked earlier. It was worth it, but it was a challenge.
Yeah.
When you think about how you allow yourself to get busy with the normal routine of business, and then you add something else into the schedule that needs to be accomplished. And at the time you're adding it, you're not really sure that it's the right move. Mm-hmm. It gets difficult to discipline yourself to take the time to do the things that are necessary to fully realize on the activity. And in the beginning, it was like that for me. I had to make a conscious decision that it was going to be worth it for me to invest the time to learn these things, do these things, and then have these things available to help me to grow my business.
Right. And I chuckle as I'm setting out my schedule when we're bringing on clients that it's one thing for you to feel you have to set up that at minimum hour meeting with me on a weekly basis. I chuckle in the beginning because what I know that you don't understand is when we hang up the phone from that meeting, all the work you now have to do. And then doing it because you know next week is coming up that we're getting back on. And some part of what I wanted to talk about here is there are two mindsets, probably more, but two specific mindsets as it relates to a business plan. You have those who feel they can hire someone to do a business plan for them, and then you have the others that feel that they need to be working on that business plan. And I happen to be of the mindset on the second side that especially for me, if you're going to raise capital, that entrepreneur's voice has to be in that plan. Did you walk into this with any particular thoughts, and whatever they were, how do you now feel about it, being engrossed in the process yourself?
I think I started the process off thinking that if I provided with a certain amount of information about what we do, like what was on our website, that someone would be able to step in and tell me what my business should be about.
Yeah.
And that was just, again, an unrealistic view. What I did find, though, is after seeing how you expressed in the first round of drafting what the business plan would look like, and how you described our business, it gave me an understanding of how other people perceive us, regardless of what it is that I'm saying on the website or in my own words. And it really emphasized for me how important it was for me to have my stamp on that, not just by saying stamp of approval, but my voice, and have things expressed in the way I would share them. Because in the dialogue that we had back and forth after the initial draft, you gained some insights and some things that I was not being articulate and expressing about what we really were trying to accomplish here. But more important than anything else, I think that it helped me to refine in my own mind what we are about here at Village Connector Community.
Right, I like that. So I was able to provide you with the mirror that oftentimes that mirror was not right. You were looking in the mirror, it's like, wait a minute, that's not me.
Exactly.
And that is what happens when we relegate something we do to someone else to carry through. Now, I do believe that entrepreneurs, and especially those who have operating businesses, do need someone to work on their business plan, but that's after they've you got to put your voice in there first. You got to talk about really what you want to do, how you want to do. To have the assistance in getting research done, or wordsmithing, or ensuring things are the way they need to be. And on my side of the fence, I help to bring in the focus as it relates to where an investor's interest would be for what it is you're saying and how you're saying you want to do it. But the guts of that plan really, for me, has to come from the entrepreneur. And an investor feels the same way. I tell people all the time that when the questions have to be answered, the investor doesn't want to hear from me. They want to hear from you. And if you relegated the whole process to me, then that can't really work. But pulling back again to an operating business, talk to me about what really motivated you to be willing to spend the time that you had to spend, pull away from your business to spend time on a plan when you really had things that you had to take care of. So where did the motivation come from to actually take those steps?
But beside the fact that you were a very convincing coach, I'll leave it there. After I started getting into the process, I started seeing how relevant some of what you were making me stop to think about was to what I was working on during the course of the business day. I've come up with some new ideas and some new approaches just by taking the time to stop and really critically look at what we were doing and what we were trying to do, and determining, is this the best vehicle for doing it? I don't think I would have gotten into that level of thought if it hadn't been for the fact that I was going through the process of having to describe my business to somebody else in the context of, I want their investment. So, something as simple as the executive summary. You completely changed my perspective with respect to how succinctly I could express the value proposition of Village Connector Community. And of course, that led me to think about other things that we could be doing. There were some unanswered questions. The more I looked through what needed to be included in that business plan, I had unanswered questions in my own mind that as I began answering them, started revealing other ways that we could be of service to people. And that enhanced the value for both the community, and I'm assuming it's going to enhance the value for an investor looking at what we have the ability to do to turn around their money in a way that is consistent with what their goals are.
One of the things I absolutely love that happens in our exchange is on a weekly basis, you have a new idea.
Yeah, and that comes from your having made me stop and really think. because we get so balled up in the day-to-day routine,
Right.
of just what we have to do today and what's going to generate revenue currently and who's got to be responsible for this or that, that we don't have time to actually reflect. And it's in the reflection,
Right.
like you said, the
Right.
mirror, it's in the reflection that you see new opportunity, better ways of doing things, other people that could play a role, how to have a greater impact. That reflection has become just priceless to me. And just the process of going through the business plan draft and looking at financials and expansion and things of that nature for the future, all of that was made possible by the lens through which you helped me to view the business.
You had significant experience in business prior to this point, but what I'd like for you to sort of address with budding entrepreneurs is how are you walking through this pace? So I just referenced the fact that each week there's new ideas. How do you walk through the pace of understanding, even though you're coming up with new ideas, how much you have to stop and focus now versus understanding of those new ideas, what goes into sort of phase 2 and phase 3? Because sometimes people get lost in not being able to really get the business plan done because now they're constantly trying to add new stuff. So sort of talk about how, because I've heard it from you, but how are you tempering yourself in the new things that you're thinking about for the first iteration versus anything you may have to do in the future?
Well, one of the things that I've done as a result of being exposed to this new way of thinking is I've always been one to be potentially distracted by shiny objects. There's always a new idea, a new way to do things. But now I have a way to evaluate where does that fit in though with the big picture? What's the timing of that? And because we're looking now at not just, oh, that'd be great to do, but what it's going to take to do it, it makes it easy to put that into context, into milestones or whatever you want to call it, timelines. So we talked about some things that I'd like to see us do that, again, weren't on my radar to do until I started thinking about what we have the ability to do. But I've already determined that's for the next round.
Right.
And I would normally have been distracted by it because the excitement over investigating it would have drawn me away from what I really need to get done currently. But now I'm becoming a little more sophisticated in how I prioritize the ideas. And that comes from understanding that, all right, here's an idea. Does that require additional finance? Does it require additional thought? Will it require additional people to be involved to make that successful? And do I have the time currently to bring that to fruition? And more times than not, I'm finding that it's a great idea, just not a great idea for now.
Right.
Get back to what you were doing now that was the great idea 3 months ago.
Right.
And so it's basically a priorities tool. Going through the business plan lets you see, okay, this is what we're capable of, but is the timing right for this?
Yeah, I love what you just said. And as you were speaking, what came to me is, it came to me, but I'll let you answer the question. What do you feel the difference is between an entrepreneur and a CEO?
An entrepreneur basically is someone who is enthralled with their ideas but has no idea whatsoever about how they're going to execute on that. A CEO is someone that can come up with the idea and develop a vision for who needs to be involved to make it happen. So I see a CEO as almost being, I'll say like a coach. The coach has a team and everybody on the team has a role and the coach understands that team member's role and the coach is there to support the team member with the resources and the training that they need to go implement what his vision was, which was score a touchdown. So I know I want to score a touchdown as a entrepreneur. As a CEO, I know that I need certain players on the team to make that happen, and everyone's got to be supported in their role. So as I see it, a CEO is almost a mentor, is definitely a visionary, but is also someone that's designed to be there to provide the resources for everyone to get the job done. You know, one of the things I talk about when I lecture is that Henry Ford had the vision for mass production of automobiles, but he wasn't sitting on his own assembly line putting nuts and bolts on cars. He understood he needed to find the right people to do that. Andrew Carnegie was not someone who was overly experienced with the steel industry. He actually knew how to find the right people who were experienced with it and support them in their effort to make the steel industry happen for him. So ultimately, I see a CEO as being more of a visionary who understands the value of other people's expertise and other people's economic support and bringing those visions to fruition.
Yeah, I think that's wonderful. And I think I feel the exact same way. As an entrepreneur, that to me is the ideas, the passion, the, you know, all of those pieces. But the CEO, once that entrepreneur steps into the CEO role, not the title, the actual role, that means that they now have to start really implementing. And they can't just implement for themselves. All of a sudden, other people have to start becoming more important than you if you want your actual vision, you know, to come to fruition.
And that, in large part, was the epiphany that I have experienced at this point in time, is realizing that if I really want to have an impact at the level that I had in my head, I needed to get out of my head and start involving more people, both in terms of expertise and finance.
Right. So that's a perfect place to end that session. Glenn, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
I think that I am looking forward to how we continue working through your process so that we can continue to bring the information to others walking the same path that you are. And just know I am learning, you are pushing me just as much as I may be pushing you. So I think it's significant because when you're working with someone who wants to make things happen, it's a lot different than when you're working with someone that you're pulling to make that happen. So
well,
thank you.
Hopefully in the protege-mentor relationship, the protege isn't the only one learning.
That's exactly right. So thank you all for joining us in this segment in talking to Glenn Garnes of Village Connected Media. Building your business plan itself is work. You can hire someone to do it, or you can do it yourself, or you can do it in a collaborative fashion. And I am very happy to be able to work with Glenn in a collaborative fashion to bring his business plan and business planning into fruition. We look forward to bringing you more information on how you can continue to step through these same processes that you see and you hear that Village Connected Media are going through. And so we have more segments to come that is going to start speaking specifically about the process of raising capital, the understanding of what investors are looking for as you walk down that path, and what do you have to offer an investor to want to provide you with that capital that you need for that vision. So stay tuned to iBoss's Capital Academy and Lifecycle VC as we continue to bring you information that will help you take your business to the next place. Have a wonderful day.